Tell me when I should start my screen.
All right. Hello, everyone, and good evening and afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the Our Ladies Gaborone event. We have Fodel, or should I say Dr. Fodel, who will be giving us a training on using iShiny, which is used for building interactive and easy web apps. Remember this, this meetup actually follows the Our Ladies Code of Conduct. So if you have any complaints, if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to me, send an email to gaborone@ourladies.org, as well as Ishmael, Untireti Ishmael. So I think everything is welcome to those who just joined us. And yes, I'll let Fodel take over.
Sure, thanks, Simisani. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the invitation. I will just share my screen. Now, can you see my screen?
Yes, I see it.
Perfect. So yeah, I will try to introduce everyone to Shiny, which is really cool tool to for our developers, I think, who want to take their analysis to the next level, to provide like a UI interface to their like code, script, etc., calculation. Because like R is really good with when it comes to data analysis, data wrangling, machine learning stuff. But sometimes it's a little bit too raw. And for people who don't code, it can be a little bit intimidating and not that trustworthy. So providing like a user interface so that the user, your manager, your boss, people who are not familiar with coding can just, click something and then get the result, trigger some calculation, etc. So it's really, really nice feature, nice value added. So I will just do live coding, right? Because I hate slides. But please, if you have any question, feel free to interrupt me, like whenever you want. Just feel free to stop me. You want like impact my focus or something, it's really fine. Just like stop me, even if I'm coding something. Just ask something. If you want to know about like any feature, feel free to ask. It will be an introduction to Shiny, nothing really fancy. So really like we will go from the basics. But I expect a little bit of knowledge from the R side. So in Shiny, I don't expect any pre-knowledge, but in R, a little bit of knowledge, like, knowing the data types, recognizing a function, this kind of stuff. So I will use, this is my RStudio session. I will just close everything except the current. So just a quick presentation. Yeah, my full name is Mohammed Al-Fodil Iyadadan. Originally, I'm from Algeria. Now, at the moment, I'm based in Hamburg, in Germany, and I work as a data scientist, between bracket R developer, and I work a lot with Shiny, and we do a lot of Shiny in production, and yeah, it's mainly, my daily tasks are like 90% related to R and Shiny. So what is Shiny? Shiny is an R package, but it's more than that, because it's not like a normal R package which you can install and use. It's really like a framework, because it has many components in it. So if you install the Shiny application and you like a Shiny package and you use it, you will have like many JavaScript components which are included in Shiny, many CSS components, HTML features, and etc. So it's really big. It's not something, it's not a normal package. That's why I like to call it like a framework, because it has like many features which are not related to R in the first place, because JavaScript, for example, is another programming language. It's a programming language which is dedicated to the web, to the reactivity. So, but Shiny included in R. So that's why Shiny is cool, because in R, you can create web application very easily with R code. And behind the scene, what Shiny does is like just, you write R code and it converts it to like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you don't have to learn all the other like web programming languages at first. It's always cool to learn them, of course, but you don't have to. You can just with R just create a web app, like a functional one that can, be used by anyone. And so I will just draw something. So this is like, at first we have always, a Shiny app is just like an R script in its essence, right? So here it's just like, sorry. So I have, for example, my R script. Generally, we call it app.r, right? And inside this R script, there are two components for my Shiny apps that are required. So I need, first of all, I need what we call my UI, so the user interface. And then I need another component. And the other component is called the server. With these two parts, I can create an application. The UI only contains the components or the elements that will be displayed to the user. It can be an input, a box, an image, a text, a title, etc. So anything that the user sees on the screen is part of the UI. That's for sure. And what is a server? The server is like the heart of the application. It's like the part where all the calculation will be done. So if you have, for example, in the UI, you have, so let's say, I don't know, you have an application that calculates, I don't know, the mean of something. And in your application, in the screen, you can see the button. You can see a button, for example, which is written calculate mean. This is your UI. You see the button and you will see the title just above or something, and you will see the result. But like the function, the R function that will calculate effectively the mean will be written in the server part. And this is important to clarify these distinctions. Because in the UI, your R code, because we will write R code in the UI to, for example, to display buttons and stuff, but this R code will be converted to HTML and CSS for the styling. However, the calculation, the real calculation that will be happen, the function that will take your vector and make a mean from it, will be R code. It won't be converted to any other language. It will be really like an R function. However, the interaction, like for example, the interactivity that you will see in your application, for example, when you click a button and something happens, this, you write it also in R, but this will be converted behind the scene into JavaScript. But please don't care about it. So here, the first thing that we can do, or that we need to do, is just like, I'm working, like I have the script here. It's not even saved. I can save it. I can call it app.r. And it's not, I mean, you're not required to call it app.r, but this is like the standard. And here I can just, load Shiny. So this is the first thing that you can do. So I load Shiny. Now we can use the function. Now I can use my two components. I said like we need two components, like the UI and the server. So the UI, so the first thing is like we need to create an object called UI here. And this object, we assign it the result of a function. And generally, I mean, there are many functions, but generally in Shiny, we start by a function called fluid page. So this function, fluid page here, will provide us with a template, with like a blank page. And inside this fluid page, we will implement all the things that we want to display to the user. But this is the basics. So the fluid page, if I keep it empty, it will still provide something. Like it will provide a page, but it's a blank one. So for now, we will see what it means exactly. But it's blank. It's a blank page, but it's not really empty. So there is a distinction. There is a nuance between between empty and a blank page. So here I have my variable, which is called UI. It's really simple. I can name it anything else, but the standard, when you see Shiny apps, when you read about Shiny apps, books, Stack Overflow, they will all name it UI. but you can name it whatever you. And then, so this is what we call, this is a function, right? This is technically speaking a function call. This is not really, this is a function, but this is a function call. We are calling the function. Why we are calling the function? Because there is parentheses, and when you see parentheses in a script, it means that you are calling a function, right? So now I have my UI, I called my function, create page, and the result of this will be assigned to the UI object. And then I will just create another object. I will name it server. Again, you name it whatever you want. But here, it's not really like a function call. It's like we are creating the function. So the server get the result of a function, but we use this function keyword. So in R, in order to create a function, we use the function keyword, and we provide parameters. And the first parameter that the function takes is the input. The second parameter is the output. So because our server part, right, makes some calculation, but it needs to have some inputs. For example, the user clicks something. Oh, this is an input. I will use it in my server to make it clear that the user clicked something and then to trigger a calculation. So this is an input. And it needs also the output, because the output, it will really like the output will be what the user will, what we will display, what we will serve to the user, like the result of our calculation, the result of our modeling, etc., the result of our, I don't know, table, plots, etc. So this is the main parameters in this function. And there is a third parameter called session. And session is really like, for like as a beginners or in as an introduction, you won't really need the session object. It's something that you will need it for really complex apps, more advanced applications, because like the session object is just an object which has many information about like many things related to your application. For example, the state of your app, which user is using your app. If you want to share data between, like, for example, between, because if you serve your application into production and you have one user who is using it at the same time with another user, you can share the data between the two sessions. And you can use the session object for it. I mean, it's really advanced. But for now, just don't care about it. Just write session here and forget it. As an introduction, our main focus will be on these two objects here, input and output. Perfect. So I will de-zoom a little bit. So I have my UI here. I have my server. Nothing is written there. So now, if I save and if I run my script here, nothing will happen, right? Although I have my two parts, nothing will happen. Why? Because I need a third part which will tell to R or tell to Shiny that, hey, I have my UI, I have my server, create a Shiny app. So, and this function or this third part is a function called simply Shiny app. And it takes two main parameters, the UI parameter. So we named it UI. That's why I will do just UI equal UI. And then another parameter called server, and it will be equal this function, the result of this. So I will just name it server. And if I save now, look what happened. Look exactly what happened in my interface, in my RStudio. So if I save, I will see something weird, right? So look here, just like a green triangle appears, and with the label run app. So RStudio has detected that we are creating a Shiny app because we have all the necessary components. Look, if I, for example, delete some parts or delete this code here, this line, and save again, it will disappear. So it will be considered as a normal script, not an app anymore. So I will do it again, save, and then I have run up. Of course, don't worry, you won't write this manually. If you want to create a Shiny app, there is in latest versions of RStudio, there is like what we call a snippet. So you can just type here Shiny, and you have a snippet here if you can see. So it's like the white icon, which is written snippet. And if I click on it, I will have a template ready for me. It's available on most on a recent version of RStudio, and you can use it. So it's fine. Now we have like an empty app, but it's not really empty between brackets. So I run it. So there is two ways of running the app. You can click on run app, this green button, right? Or better, you can just hit Control Shift Enter or Command Shift Enter on Mac. So it's really easy to, it's faster, it's more productive. So Control Shift Enter, the app is launched. So you can see that there is like the fluid page, this function provides us with this like empty user interface. But look what happened here. If I click on investigate, if I use the DevTools, which is like a tool by Chrome, provided by Chrome, to see like what's the engine behind this application, I can see it's not really empty. I mean, there are a lot of content here. There is like HTML code. There are many like JavaScript dependencies. If I go to, for example, sources here, I think I go here, I will see many cache stuff, JavaScript code. Here, some sources. So I see init, shiny.js, input binding.js. So it's huge, right? It's heavy. It's not that simple. Although I mean, we have written nothing, but it has like some skeleton. So now how we can write, like display something in our app. So first of all, we start with the basics. This is a Shiny app, but at the same time, as I stated in the beginning, it's not really an R app. It's an R app with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So in HTML, for example, if we start from HTML and we want to create a web application, we have to use HTML because this is like the main language to use if you want to create a web application or a website. So if you want to create something, you have to do HTML. You have to start with something. And in HTML, you have what we call tags, HTML tags. And HTML tags have this form here. So for example, if I want to create a title, a big title, so I will just write this. So I will just write H1, which is like for a heading. And then, for example, print my title here, or my first Shiny app. And then close my tag. This is a way of writing this in HTML if I want to display a title. However, we are in R, right? We cannot do this. If I run this, I will have an error. I will have like a sourcing error. R does not recognize this. So Shiny provides us with functions that, we use R function, but it is converted to HTML tags. So it's really cool. So the function are called, so if I use Shiny, actually it's not really function. It is function, but it's mainly an object. So if I do Shiny ... I have a question. Are you comfortable with this type of writing? Who has used before this writing here, this ... stuff? Just in the chat, if you can answer if you have used before, like yes or no.
I don't. Yes, some are saying yes, and some are not really familiar with it.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. I mean, yeah, many people are familiar with it, which is cool. So this is like the way of accessing a namespace of a package. So Shiny is a package. If I want to see like all the functions provided by this package, I can just do ... here and then control space here, and I have like a list of all the function provided. Okay, and this is also a way to because when you write packages, you always provide the name of the package and then the functions when inside your script, so that you avoid like conflicts in your scripts, because many packages share like the same name, function names. For example, base R has a function called filter. Base R, maybe. Let me think. I think there is a function called filter. Yeah, it's a state package, which is part of the base R package. So stats has a function called filter, and dplyr has a function called filter. So if you use filter in your script without this type of writing, you might have like conflicts and problems later. So always append like the name of the package and the function. So now let's back to our HTML components. So Shiny provides an object called tags. And you can see that this is an object. And this object contains many, many, many HTML tags. I mean, most HTML that you will ever use. And you can just access the HTML functions using like $sign here, and you will have all the list. So you can see that there are like maybe more than 50 elements. So it's more than you need, than what you need. Sorry. So here let's search for an H1, right? Because we wanted to write an H1 heading. So we just do like $sign, and then we write. You can the search. You can type H, and we have all the headings. There's H1, H2. It goes until H6. H1 is a bigger heading, and H6 is a smaller one. But let's use the bigger heading, so H1, and then you can see that this is a function call, right? Because I have my parentheses, so I can type here my first Shiny app, and I can delete this because I don't need it anymore. Let's comment it. Oh no, sorry, copied something. So I'll just delete it, save this. Now I run my app again, and you will see that I have a title in the top, right? My first Shiny app. Really simple. Now, if I inspect this, if I do like this, right click and go to inspect, and it will take me this. You can see that it has created the title, but it is not in fact like we have used an R function, but look what happened. It has created like an H1 tag, right? Which is cool because we don't have to care about HTML. We can just think about functions, which is like what we should do, because R is really good at functions. So let's work with functions. So yeah, this is my first Shiny app, and yeah, that's cool. Now let's say I want to add a paragraph, right? And a paragraph in HTML is just like a p tag. I write like a paragraph. This is an introduction to Shiny app development, right? Something. Let me just de-zoom a bit, and then I close my tag. And I do this, and do this, and that's it. This is my p tag. So here, same thing. I will just put a comma here because we are inside a function, right? So we have to separate our component by comma. So inside the function call, right? So here I will just do Shiny tags $sign. So here actually we don't need to do Shiny because we are loading it. So we can just we can either remove this library or we can just remove this. I always tend to write this way. So let's just remove this library Shiny. And yeah, but like we have to do Shiny here too, and Shiny here. And then we don't need this library because we're using the namespacing. And now I can just put here, instead of my p tag, I will just put function called p, right? So a cool name for a function. It has one letter. I don't know if there is like any other function in R which has only one letter. I mean p. And then we can type something. Can just copy this, put it here, and now run my app again. And yeah, I have my intro. I can check it, and this is actually like a p tag. Okay, so this is like the HTML conversion in Shiny. So we want to write HTML, we have to use the tags object provided by the Shiny package, and the tags object contains many tags, HTML function tags, and we can choose and use them really simply. We don't need any parameter here, just write them. And yeah, any questions so far? Or if it's okay, just write in the chat, okay, and I can move on.
Yep, they're saying they're all good.
Cool. Now, we have written like this is an introduction, we have written text, that's fine, but it's really boring. Now let's move on to something more interesting and talk about like outputs, right? So we are here to, to display plots, because R is amazing with plots. It has ggplot, right? R is good at tables and etc. So we want to display this kind of stuff. So how can we proceed in Shiny to display this? It's a two-way process. So first of all, we have to state in our UI that we want to display. Let's start with a plot, right? Let's say we want to display a plot, and we have to state in our UI that we want to display like a plot, like an R plot, a ggplot, right? So what we do, there is a function that is the family function in Shiny, which has this format. So it's like it starts with type. I will write something but it doesn't exist. So it's type of output, right? And then the name or the code or the word output. So if I want here a table as an output, I will write table output to state that I want the table as output. There is a function called table output. If I want a plot, I will use the function plot output. If I want a text as output, which is different than my HTML text, because I want, for example, a reactive text, right? I will write text output. If I want like something not really text, but like a code results in my Shiny apps, it's called verbatim text output, which is different. But let's say here we are starting with plot, so I just hit Control-Shift again. I have my list and I write plot here, and I have plot output, right? So that is the function. This is the family function. I have plot output, and in plot output, it's really important. So I'm stating here in my UI that I want a plot. So I just need to provide something very, very important. I need to provide like one parameter. The other one are optional, right? So you have many parameters, but the other ones are optional. There is only one parameter which is mandatory, which is the output ID. So why do we need to have an output ID always whenever we want to display an output? Because we might have, for example, let's say we have a Shiny application with 3 plots, right? And we want our user, when she or he clicks on the one plot, like on the first plot, she gets something, like some kind of reactivity. And when she clicks on the other plots, she gets a completely different reactivity process. So how can we differentiate between these plots, technically speaking? Using the ID. So we will write a specific reactivity for each plot using, hey, we will write, hey, using this ID, make this kind of reactivity. Using this ID, make this kind of reactivity. So this is the way of differentiating our handling of reactivity. It's really, really important. And like, I mean, you don't have any choice. I mean, if you run the app forgetting this parameter, you will get an error. Argument output ID is missing with no default. So you have to provide it. So here you can name it whatever you want. So I will name it PLT1 for plot 1, but doesn't matter. I'll just put it here on one line. And cool. So now I will run the app. I won't have anything. Why? It's really simple, because I told you at the beginning, it's a two-step process. So the first step is stating what you want to display. So this is really like, a wish. This is like not something that's real. It's just a wish. I wish to have a plot in my UI. Okay, I define it like the bones, like the bare bones, the skeleton of my UI, but it's not here yet. Here, like when writing like HTML tags, it's here, it's there. Okay, that's fine. But when dealing with our output, it's always a two-step process. First, defining your wish, what you want to display, and then render this wish. So just, you have like a state, you have what you want to display, and then you have the rendering process. And the rendering process, it's only like you are going to implement it, because here we have stated that we want to plot. Now in the server, we are going to create this plot. And how we do it, like, there is like, it's not that complicated. It's really simple, actually. So there is always in Shiny, we have this first step process, we give an output ID, and then we use this output ID in the server so that we retrieve our output and then implement it. So the syntax is really simple. We always do the same syntax. It's always the same. So we write always output here, right? So the keyword output, and then $, and then we provide the ID of the output that we want to display, to implement, to create. So I will just call it PLT. It's PLT1, so I will just use it here, type PLT1 here. And then I will assign it the result of a specific function. So in the UI, we have used like the something output family, like plot output, table output, text output, etc. In the server, it's the same thing. We are going to use a render family. So it will be render plot if it's a plot. It will be a render text if it's a table, if it's a text. If it will be a render table if you want to render table, etc. and so on. So here I will just do shiny dot dot and then render plot because we want to render plot. And now inside this function, we will write the necessary or the code necessary to create our plot. Let's say, let's do it in ggplot because I quite like ggplot, to be honest. I'm a noob in base rplot. I don't know how to plot base rplots. So I'll do it in ggplot2. I will load the library. It's perfect. So now here I can just do ggplot2 or ggplot. I will use a base R database, or which is called mtcars. So I can use mtcars database, which provides, I think it's it's really known database. You can just type mtcar in console and see the columns. It's really nice to work with. And I will use, for people who are not familiar with ggplot, I'm doing nothing fancy here, I'll just create a histogram of some variable using the AES function, HWY for the name of the variable I want to display the plot, and then geom histogram. So I save, I run, and now I have my histogram. But I don't have my histogram. Why I don't have the histogram? Because here the name of the ID is PLT1, and here I type it PLT. So it has to be the same ID here and here. Otherwise, it won't be recognized. So if I add the 1 here, and I save, and I run again, I will have my plot finally. Oh, object HWY. I'm sorry, there is no HWY colon in mtcars. It's in another data frame. So the name that I would use is CTY. So no, I run again. CTY not found, really? Sorry again. Yeah, live coding MPG. So the colon name is MPG. Now I'm pretty sure that it will work. Yeah. So I have an histogram here, so you can see that I have my nice plot, my nice ggplot, histogram. And what's cool, it's like by default, without doing anything, we have some CSS stuff. And CSS is like the programming language to style our web apps in general. And here you can see if I shrink a little bit the window, the plot will be adapted. It will resize automatically to be in accordance to your page, to your window, which is really cool actually, because if you are using another framework, you will have to code this behavior, and Shiny is just here by default. So you get some times, you gain some time here, and it's cool. Yeah. So I have my histogram here. Quick thing. So it's important if I'm doing, like, for example, if I'm inside my render plot here, right? And I want, let's say I want to, I don't know, just take, like, for example, if I check empty cars very quickly, if I do a head of empty cars, or let's do a view, let's view it. You can see that it has the following column: MPGs, CYL, DSP, etc. So let's say I want to take the 3 first columns. So before I do my plot, for whatever reason, let's just suppose I need to take the first 3 columns. Yeah. So in base R, I think we can do like this: empty cars, and then empty cars, sign, to replace it, and then take, for example, the from the first. Yeah. So all the rows here, and the from the first to the third column, right? So if I do this, I get an error. So why do I get an error here? Because so when I used my function here, like without this line, so just this one here, I didn't get any error. But if I do this, I will get an error. Why? Simply because I'm inside a function, and if I'm inside the function expects only it expects me to write only one line of code. This is actually not 2 lines of code, it's 1 line of code because it's linked with the plus sign. So actually it is like this, it should be written like this. But if I write like 2 lines of code, like here, I will have to put the what we call like the I don't know, I forgot how to call them in English, this parentheses here. So you have to, if you want to write many like big, like a code chunk here, you have to write like this parentheses. I don't know how to call them in English. If someone knows, would be nice. I forgot, but you have to write them. And then here you can write like whatever code you want. You can write like 1,000 lines, doesn't matter. So if you get an error, you know, like you're writing many, like 2, 3, 4 lines of code, and you get an error. So it must be that you have this issue. Okay, so let's do it again. So I will remove this 2 stuff, and and I run my app. What's happening? Put 3 here. Now I run my application and I get an error. Yeah, brackets, curly brackets. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's exactly this. It's curly brackets. So here I have an error. Now I will put my curly brackets. Tack. I will paste it. And now I don't have any error anymore because I have my curly brackets. I can write because I can write an expression inside. I can write mini code, you know, like bunch of code. This is like important. Yeah. So let's add another plot, or let's add a table because we have written a plot. So now let's write a table, and let's put the table just above the plot. So we can just in Shiny, if you want to reorder your component, your UR, you just put the function that calls this component before the others. If I want my table to be above my plot, I would just write the function here above my plot function. So I would just do table output. Oh, sorry. And then table output, I will provide an ID. Let's call it tbal1. I will here important. I will just separate my components, my UI components by comma, but I won't do it here because here I'm inside a function. I'm not inside a function call, which is different. So here you see like the normal bracket, but here you see the curly bracket, which is like, it's a small distinction. It's a silly distinction. It's really important because at the beginning, I was really frustrated to have like this kind of errors for getting a comma here, putting a comma here. So if I put a comma here, I will get an error. But then, why do I have an error? Oh, there is a comma here. Shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. So yeah. So now I have, I have my first plot. I want to provide like a table, let's say, of the first row of my data frame, which is the empty cars. We'll remove this because this code is not used at all, just to illustrate the fact. And then I will implement my table, okay? So the same way, I will write output, $, the ID of my table, which is tbl1, copy it here, and then assign it the result of a function, which is not render plot because it's not a plot, not render text because it's text, but render table. So just do render table, and then curly brackets. Thank you for giving me the name. I forgot it. So curly brackets, and then here. Give me just 5 minutes. I'll just turn on the light. It's getting darker here. I'll come back. Sorry.
So remember, guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to write it in the chat, or just, you don't have to interrupt him, but you can just stop him and then ask a question.
Sorry, I'm back. I'm just back.
All right.
Did someone say ask a question or something?
No, I was just reminding everyone to
Okay.
write their questions in the chat.
Yeah, perfect. So here I will just do the same, to implement my table, I will just do head, for example, to print the first 6 rows. So head empty cars, and that's it. The table will be implemented, and I run my app again, and I see we have a table here, and we have a plot, which is already cool, but it's not that cool because, we can just plot them in R Markdown, or we can display them, in script, display the results. We are using Shiny for really the reactivity of it, not to display stuff. We are like using Shiny because we want to create behaviors. When a user clicks somewhere, something must happen. Let's start with an example, like simple example. Let's say that we want to give the ability to our users to choose the color of this bars here. It's black by default, like a really silly feature, but let's say we want to give our users this ability, choose a color, be happy. So now we are going to talk about inputs in Shiny. So we want to get like something from the user, right? The color name, and then pipe it into the function. But we have to get it. So this is, if we want to get something from the user, we need to use input functions. And in Shiny, input functions are, we have to do the same, actually. We have to create them in our UI because the input is visible, The user has to see that he has to type somewhere. So there is an input, there is a box where he or she will choose a color or type the name of the color. So the function, there are like many input functions. So if I do Shiny and I type input, you can see that we have like many. We have file input, date input, slider input, text input, select input, numeric input. We want to provide the user the ability to choose the color in textual form. So our input logically will be called text input, right? And just the same way, we will provide some parameters here. So it will be like, for example, one very important parameter, the input ID, because we will have to collect the input in the server. But how can we collect this input in the server? We need the ID of this input. So we will name it just, for example, color, or let's name it color underscore name. And then we need other mandatory parameter in this case. So for example, the label, the title that will be displayed just above the input. For example, please select a color, right? And then a value, which is like the default value. When the user, like for example, when the app starts, there is like a default value, the beginning value. And here, let's say that our bars will be by default when the app starts will be red, right? And then the user can always choose. And then red this way. Yeah, this other information are not really important. So now I have like my input. I can run the app, and I have a box here. So I can type here stuff. I have my label just above. Please select the color. Yeah, but nothing happened. There's no reactivity yet because I didn't link my input to the plot yet. I need to make a link, to make a bridge between the two. I need to pipe the result of this input, what the user gives me, into the function that creates the plot. So in ggplot, in order to modify the color of a histogram, we have to use the fill parameter in geom histogram. And here in the fill parameter, if I do, for example, red, and I run the app, I will have red bars. But what I want to get this information from the user. So I want to get it from the input. So I write this. This is the syntax. The same way as output. Here we are dealing with input. So I write input, and then I need to collect the ID of the input that I want to collect. That I have to write the ID of this input. So same syntax too. So it was like output $sign. Now it's input $sign. And then the ID of the input that we are collecting. And here it's like color name. So I copy this, I put it here. So the user what the user will type here will be collected and will be piped, transferred to this function, and we will have reactivity, right? So I just do this, and then I will have, by default it's written red, so I will have red bars. But if I just write, for example, yellow here, I've got yellow. And if I, let me just zoom out a bit. So if I write green, I will have green. But there is a problem in my application yet, because whenever the user whenever I type, look, if it's empty, I have an error. Why? Because Shiny is really reactive to this input. Whenever the value of this input changes, it will trigger this function here, this render plot function, this ggplot function. And this ggplot function, of course, if it sees that the fill parameter has like an invalid value, which is here in an empty string, because we didn't write anything, we will get an error, right? Unknown color name. If I write something like not related, for example, this, I will have unnamed color name too. But if I write, like, for example, red, I will have this color name. So here it's not really a good example of a text input. So it will be nice to have a select input so that the user have a drop down and can select like which color, she wants like have to type the name of the color, and then one can provide like an invalid color name and stuff, and we will get errors, blah blah blah. So we can provide like drop down, which would be cooler. So here, instead of putting text input, we can put like simply select input, right? And select input is like just a name for a drop down, and then we have the same parameter label, but we have another parameter which is imported, and it's called choices. And here, choices, we will just provide like the names of the colors which can be used. So, for example, red, right? And then green, black, yellow, I don't know, tomato. It's a valid color, actually. Peru, which is the name of a country and the color. So, and then I have my choices, and then I can do selected, which is the default color that will be there selected. So the default we set like red. So give me the default color, and then I run my app, and I will have a nice drop down. So here we at the beginning we had like a text input where the user can type, but now not anymore. The user has to choose from like a selection. So I can just do green, and to be reactive, to black, to be reactive, yellow, tomato, and Peru, which is nice too. Black too, etc. So it's really nice, right? But let's say we want to, it's too much. Let's say we want to provide all the existing colors here in the choices. We're not going to write manually, like each color have like a vector of like 200 elements. So what's cool here in this, what's cool about R, it's not really related to Shiny, it's about R in general, is that we can, like in parameters, inside parameters, we can not only provide vectors, we can provide any object if the function takes it. So we can provide here, in select input, we can provide a function, and the result of this function will be used by the choices parameter. And in R, there is a cool function called colors, which actually, provides or returns a vector of all the available colors. You have like a vector of 655 or something, 57, if I count these two, right? So I can just put here, like use the color function, which is a base R function, I think, or gr device, yeah, it's base. And then don't forget the parentheses, because we want like to call it, we want to get a result from this function, So the parentheses are really important in this case. Here we are. I run the app, and I will have all the colors. So I will have a drop down here, like many colors. Like I can, and it's cool. Like I have a scroll here, which look, it looks normal, it looks standard, but it's not that easy to write this kind of like behavior in other framework. It's really nice to have it like ready to go, and I can choose any color I want. It will be it will be modified in the fly. So this is like a really simple example, but just imagine what you can do with, you can really go like, this is like 1 milli% of what's possible to do in Shiny. Just, I mean, there is no limit in terms of like what you can do, what you can interact, what you can link, what you can display. And then, like, if you want to get really advanced to it, you can like write Shiny code, and then you can integrate with JavaScript code, and it can talk. I mean, Shiny can talk to your JavaScript code. You can put CSS code to, you know, really like modify the style of your application, etc. It's really insane what you can do. Yeah.
Fidel, you've got a question. Yeah. Someone's asking if we can type in the drop down to go to a specific color.
Actually, no, because in the drop down you cannot type. You can only choose. This is like this is a characteristic of a drop down. You will just have like, you know, some selections that you can choose from, but you will not be able to type. Because you know, if I try to type something, I cannot, because we want to limit the ability to from the user to type something, because we might think that if the user types something, she or he gets an error. So we provide drop down so that, you know, the user can only select stuff, and we are sure that she or he will never get an error. So this is like the main utility of a drop down. And it's easier. Maybe it's like faster too, because she doesn't have to type, so she just can, you know, choose something. It's easier, more convenient. So that was all for my introduction. I hope it wasn't too heavy. That was just, you know, like really small introduction to Shiny, just that you can get an idea, maybe like break the ice about, like, because some people see Shiny as something complicated, but it's really not that complicated. And yeah, if you have any question, yeah, I'm here.
Right. Thank you so much, Fidel. Could you just provide us with your contact details? If anyone wants to reach out to you, you can provide it in the chat.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can reach me on Twitter. I have the handle, this handle on Twitter, Mofodil. Yeah, I think anyone can send me an email. Message. Let me just check if I think, yeah. So this is my profile. Yep. Hit me up, like the young people say. There's a question.
Yeah.
How do you change all the orders of the components? That's a good question. Actually, let's say, so we have here a table and then a plot. Let's say I want a plot and then a table, right? So I can just modify the order of appearance of the function that are, you know, displaying this object or this component. So let's say I want my plot above my table. I will just put my function plot output above my function table output. Like here the comma, then comma here, and then save, and I will have my plot above my table. But it's that easy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is it possible to, there's a question from Gianna. Is it possible to change the size of the title? That's a really good question. Which size exactly? Like, are we talking about this?
Yeah, the heading. Which means the heading.
Yeah, the heading. Yeah, it's definitely possible. So here we are using like a big heading, which is the H1. So if I want like a smaller heading, I can use, for example, the H2 or the H3, or like the smallest heading, I can use, for example, the let's say 6, but it will be small, you know. Let's use like an H4, for example, and just keep this heading and create a new one, you know, like below an example of an app, right? And then I will put like H4. You know? This is just another HTML tag, and you will see it's getting smaller.
Yeah.
And of course, I can write CSS here if I want really to have like the exact width, the exact size. It's also possible to write CSS. I mean, you can use CSS files, but you can use also inline CSS. I mean, as an attribute to the HTML. So we can do, for example, style equal font. I think the name of the CSS property is called font size. and I can do, for example, 200 pixels. Let's make it really big. I save this, and I run it, and then I will have huge, title. But CSS is another story, it's another language. You have to know the basics, a little bit of CSS. So just forget about this. Just to show you that it's possible to write CSS like in this function.
Yeah, you actually have a couple of more questions.
Cool. Let me start from the beginning. So there is a question from Simba. Can we drag the UI object in the interface? Yes, it's possible, but you have to use like a specific JavaScript library, which is provided by an R package. There's like an R wrapper, which wraps this JavaScript library, and it's possible you can use it, but it will take a bit of time if I demonstrate it, because I would have to install the package, and like use it, write some stuff. So it's definitely possible, yeah. Unfortunately, I forgot the name of the package that does that, but it's definitely there. I've seen a couple of examples, and it's easy. How we can filter for some specific rows from the table. So the same way you would do it in R. So in base R, it's possible to do it, but I will recommend using dplyr because it's super easy, or data table. So I will just, for example, here give an example of a dplyr function to filter like the my data frame. So I can just write here empty cars, or let's see, dplyr filter, right? And then the name of the data, empty cars, and then let's say I want only the cars with the MPG. Just check here, empty cars quickly. Empty cars, MPG. Let's say I want only to display like the cars which have an MPG greater than 20. So I can just, for example, if I want to know exactly how many cars I have, here I can do this, empty cars, MPG, which because MPG greater than 20, I will have this one, and I will just want to check the length. So this is base R. It's really ugly. Use it if you want, but the dplyr makes life easy. So I have 14 cars which with MPG super than 20. So I will just do here MPG greater than 20, and I will assign it to another object or another variable name. I will call it MPG, GT20, and then I will use this here. I will run the app, and I will have only, here like the counts of MPGs that are greater than 20. Not in my table, in my plot, because I use this only in my plot. But if I want to use it everywhere, I can just put it outside. So here, like so that every output can access it. So then it's here, and then I can put it in my head. Or let's remove the head, get all the values with an MPG greater than 20. And then I will have here only the values with an MPG greater than 20. And I can make this reactive too, I can make this reactive. Let's say I want the user to choose like how do I call it? The threshold, like let's say not 20, 15. So I can just here provide like an input. In this case, a numeric input, right? So I'll just here call it MPG chosen, right? And then provide a label. I will call it duck. Please provide the MPG threshold. Yeah, that's cool. And then a default value, let's say 20, right? And then a minimum of, I don't know, 10, a maximum of 30, and 30, and a step of 1. Yeah, and that's it. We have our numeric input, and then we will put the result of this numeric input in our function here. And I will just put here input $, and the name of the ID, which is input chosen. Run the app, and then there is an error somewhere. Because here the problem is like Okay, this is interesting because the problem, I get my input, my numeric input here, and Shiny by default, when it collects the input, it collects the input as a character string. And here, this dplyr function, we are using this filter with numeric column, so we have to provide a numeric input here, so a numeric value. So I can just get my input and put as numeric, and then it should work. No, it didn't work. Filter. Sorry. Yeah, there is an error here. So, which is fine because here I'm using like an input, right? So I'm using an input which is a reactive object outside of a reactive function. So this function here, render plot, render table, are what we call reactive functions. So if we use a reactive object, we have to put them inside this reactive function. So I will just put it here. I will do something, I don't have time to get into details about reactive object, but I will just do it like here in my table. And let's say the plot will not care. We just use a normal empty cars, and we will have reactive empty cars here in only in my table. Right, so I just put mpg greater than 20, get this result, run the app again, and now we have. Let's see if you can see here. We have an input, so we have said that our filter will get only the cars with the mpg greater than 20. So let's say if I want to get the cars which have an mpg greater than 22, I will just here type 22, and I will have only the cars which have an mpg greater than 22. So it's reactive. So let's say I want to display only the cars with an mpg greater than 30. So I will just type here 30, and I will get in my table only the mpgs greater than 30, and etc. etc. So yeah, pretty cool. Okay. I will go to another question. Can we have objects side by side, for example? Yeah, it's possible to have objects side by side, but in this case, you can use some Shiny functions. For example, there is a set of function called fluid row and columns, or you can use CSS for this. So it's pretty easy to do it. I would recommend just going to for the Shiny function, like there's a function called columns, pretty simple to use and cool. Another question, would you show us in the future how to use CSS and JavaScript with Shiny? Yeah, I mean, we can do another session if you want, of course. I mean, yeah, but this is quite advanced stuff. So if the users are quite familiar, the users need to be a little bit familiar with Shiny. If it's the case, I mean, there's no problem. Yeah, for sure. And last question, how could we scroll the mouse over a column and show its information in more detail, like interacting with the graph? So how could we scroll the mouse over a column, show it some? What do you mean here?
I think she means if you scroll over, there'll be like a comment or a bubble text box. Is that what you mean, Luciana?
This okay, this is possible. So, and pretty simple. I can show you, for example, there are like many ways to achieve this goal, but the simplest way is to use a specific package or a specific package called DT, and DT provides like interactive tables. So I would just use, instead here of Shiny table output, I will use DT and put DT output. And instead here of Shiny render table, I will put DT render DT, right, for data table. And then I will run the app, and I will have an interactive table instead of a static table. So here I can just scroll. I can search for something. I can search for 21, and I will have I will have the values that has 21. I can also order my columns from the smallest to the highest value, from the highest value to the smallest one. That is like, there is here next, there is like a paging stuff. I can just show like step by step, not all the table at once. I can show like the 10 first values, 25, all values, you know. I have less than 100, so yeah. So I just want to choose 10, etc. So it's pretty cool package, and you can do really more than this. This is like really like a drop of water, like of what's possible to do. Okay.
Do we have any more questions or comments for Del? Yeah, I've got a question. Are there any like resources online, like tutorials or workshop we can follow to learn more?
Yeah, sure. There are many. Unfortunately, in Shiny, I wish we will have more tutorials, more resources. I mean, we have many, but it's relatively relatively few in comparison to other frameworks.
Yeah.
So I will highly suggest, for example, the book from Hadley Wickham. It's called Mastering Shiny. You can Google it. So I will just type the name, Mastering Shiny, from Hadley Wickham. And you have like the Shiny official documentation in the RStudio website. It's a bit raw. Some YouTube video online if you want. Just type Shiny R new on YouTube. You will find some YouTube tutorials. And yeah, I think for an introduction, that's it. Yeah, that's the main resource that I can think of. Maybe there are others. Feel free to share them.
Okay, so very quickly, Fidel, could you just show us how to publish your web app?
How to publish your web app? This is unfortunately it's a bit complicated. Not that complicated, but it will require me to use like what we call like an. I mean, it's possible to do it in several ways. You can use a Shiny server. You can use what we call Shiny proxy. And you can use the RStudio platform, which is called RStudio.io. And the easiest way is like RStudio.io. You have just, you can just click here, and just publish your application. And then it will ask you if you want to install these packages. You can just say yes. And then it will install packages required to publish your applications. I don't know, where am I? Which session? Okay, I'm project here. Just check. Oh, okay. So to publish content, you first need to connect to RStudio. Unfortunately, yeah, here you can see that you have ShinyApp.io. You have also another product which is paid, which is not free. It's called RStudio Connect. But ShinyApp.io, I think they have, if I type here, they have a free tier that you can use, which is limited, but you can still use. And then you can just connect account, create an account, and follow the steps. Unfortunately, I cannot show you because I am using like the laptop of the office, and I have like some restrictions in terms of using this external account. But if you are using your private laptop, just go for it. It's really fine. And it's really easy to publish. So if I go here, for example, shiny.io, and I'm here, you can see that the pricing, you have like a pricing of $0 per month, it's free. You can use up to 5 applications, 25 hours from like user usage, and you can go like 10 or 30, yeah, for professional use. Yeah, this one. Yeah, for beginners, I would suggest just go for the free one and just play with it. And then where you're like really comfortable or working for a company, just ask your company to get, for example, the premium of like this one, the basic one, which should be enough for a small company.
Okay, right. I've got another question. This is a little bit unrelated to R, but I don't know if you're familiar with the Hugo website, which shows different themes. Yeah. So is there a difference between using the Hugo theme websites and using R Shiny?
So Hugo is just like a framework to create like a static website, if I remember. You cannot, yeah, you cannot create any reactivity in this website. You just like display stuff and that's it. But in Shiny, you display like you can use Hugo inside Shiny, in Shiny, the fact that you can process calculation, you can process algorithm, like modeling stuff inside your website. So this is called like, this is difference between like an application and a website. A website, you can have it like static, you just see stuff, it doesn't move. You can click here, it goes to like redirection. But if you ask it to run linear model and give you back the result according to, like, for example, a CSV file that you have loaded or something, it won't be able to do it. In Shiny, it is possible.
Right. So do you need to have a background in HTML to learn how to?
I think HTML, you can learn it in 2 hours, like maximum.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
check some YouTube. HTML is pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. And you
Really
didn't use too many, tags, or you didn't use too many.
No, we don't. I
functions,
mean,
yeah.
like in general, because like in at work we have used maybe like, I don't know, 6, 7 tags,
All right.
mainly headings and paragraph tag.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as you showed in the, it's very responsive. I didn't know that RShiny is, like, by default is responsive. That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the main value added of it, and main feature of it.
Yeah. So if there aren't any more questions, I don't see anyone writing anything in the chats. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I just want to also note that tomorrow, our brother from Botswana, our users, will be having his event tomorrow at 11 in the morning. He'll be showing us how to create emails from our using a particular package. And Our Ladies Cologne will be having their event next week, Saturday, I think. Not next week Saturday, next week Friday. They'll be talking about R in bioinformatics. So yeah, that'll be very interesting to see. Yeah, you guys can follow Fidel. You can reach out to him. He's quite busy during the week, so you can he definitely does get back to you. No, I'm just teasing you.
Yeah, so no, yeah, I mean, I will try, definitely. I mean, if I have, of course, I won't be able, unfortunately, to answer immediately, but
yeah, no, but he definitely answers. Yeah, he really does. Yeah. So just remember, this has been recorded and everything will be uploaded to the Our Ladies channel. If you've missed any of our previous events, please go to the Our Ladies channel and subscribe. Fidel, you too. And yeah, I think we are done. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you in the next Our Ladies event.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Goodbye.